The Chief Women Arise talk show, we're going to go back into self-image part 2. We had such a good discussion time with that, and there was so much that came out. I just feel like there's a lot more we could talk about. And we all struggle with this self-image. So I'm going to give some pointers that might help us to learn how to redirect our thought process so that we can embrace ourselves in a greater measure. So my question goes to, at first, do you naturally see the glass half empty or half full? If you have a glass and it's filled with liquid halfway, some of us, a good portion of us would say, well, that glass is half empty.
That's really interesting, Pastor Sharon, because before I really gave lordship to Christ, I was always that half empty. I would call my sister, I'd complain about all kinds of things, and now it's like I don't do that anymore because I see it half full.
Yeah. See, and that's what I'm talking about. That's what we want to empower everyone who's listening to learn how to do this, because it really is an attitude switch. We're going to read this little story. It's short. It says, during my stay at an expensive hotel in New York City, I woke up in the middle of the night with a stomachache. I called room service and ordered some crackers. When I looked at the charge slip, I was furious. I called room service and fumed. I know I'm in a luxury hotel, but $11.50 for 6 crackers is outrageous. The crackers are complimentary, the voice at the other end coolly explained. I believe you are complaining about your room number. But we jump to conclusions, don't we?
Yeah.
He assumed it was going to be outrageously expensive to get crackers in the middle of the night. And so when he saw that, his eyes went to the larger number on the paper. And that's just a simple example of what I'm talking about here. We can think about the last time you had someone take a photo of you. And you look at the photo. What do you see? You see all the negative things, right? You pick your face apart. And you think, oh, I didn't smile good. Look at my hair's out of place. I mean, anything you can think of, you pick it apart.
Yep.
But in reality, the picture is probably just as good as it is bad. When your friend may even say, oh, I think it's a good picture. But you see the negative, right? So how do we retrain ourselves? There is a scripture, a verse in the Bible that talks about, think about those good things. What is the good report? What are the positive things? And when I'm teaching modeling, this is one of the things I do is I say, look at your face. We get a mirror and we look. Tell me what you think are the good qualities in your face. What do you see that you like? Because we naturally train ourselves to see what we don't like.
Right.
And so, how does this conversation, what makes you think now about the way you think about yourself? Let's get real here and share some of our stuff so that we can help our audience. So somebody tell me what you think about that.
I know for me, with my transition, just having, lesions and going from really never dealing with acne or anything growing up, at first it was more shocking. And then when people would respond to me, I had to make a conscious decision not to take what they're saying as my feelings. Like, why do you look like that? Or, most people wouldn't think that they're beautiful. How do you have confidence? And then one day I just said, because what I see in the mirror is different from them. But also I always taught myself as an athlete that my input would affect my output. So if I was constantly putting in negative thoughts, even of myself, the situation, the game, the people I was around, that was going to be what I reproduce. And I heard this story one day, and it was about this guy, and it's not a true story, but this guy went around the world planting millions of apple seeds. We know Johnny Appleseed did. And just think, if you plant millions of apple seed, would you ever get an orange? No, and it's the same thing with our positive thoughts or negative. If we constantly plant negative thoughts, how could we think something positive is going to produce?
Right.
And so I just always remind myself of that, when I have those moments of, even just self-doubt or not thinking I'm beautiful, or that I don't have the hair I wish I had. But when I look at myself, I still see beauty. And I think that those were the things that keep me, grounded in that area of not going to the half empty and looking at things half full.
Yeah, so good. And another thing which you alluded to, I want to accent, is that it's not just about our looks.
Right.
It really is that inner self-image that comes out. You can look at somebody and you think they are so beautiful, but if you really looked at their face, they're not. It's not that they're beautiful. It's just their image from inside comes out. or they're so likable that you think they're beautiful.
Yeah. As you was talking, I heard my mom saying to me, she always say, Shayna, the older you get, the less you care what other people think about you. And it's true. My mother, she's older now. She'll throw on something and just go out, and she'll be like, I don't care, because she has gotten delivered from people and their opinions. Yeah. And I think that's where a lot of our self-esteem issues come from, because we're always thinking about what other people think about us. Right. And when we get delivered from people, then we'll start looking at ourselves and being content with what God made.
Yeah. And so much of that is because we allow other people to dictate our self-worth, and instead of getting that self-worth from the inside out. Naomi, what do you have to say about this?
Well, I think that it's definitely a topic that women need to know more about and understand that we're not defined by what other people think of us, but also, like Jeanette was saying, I've read a book called Switch On Your Brain from Dr. Caroline Leaf. I don't know if any of y'all have read that.
Yes.
But it's an amazing book, and she's a believer, and she puts scripture in her books. And one thing she teaches is that as a neuroscientist, our brains can actually control the cells in our bodies, and we have millions of cells in our bodies, and if we think negative thoughts, then it affects the cells in our body and can produce negative effects physically. And same thing with positive thoughts. So when we're always thinking, in terms of good or bad, or good or evil, it's what is it doing to our actual physical selves as well as our mental state?
Yeah, that's so good.
And you know what, Sharon, just real quick, what came to mind, me and you, we didn't grow up in the era of social media. And I think it's such a difference now with this self-image thing, because when we were growing up, we didn't have a cell phone, and we weren't doing all this, but this is what a lot of I'm not even just say young women, all women are doing, and it's really dictating this self-image thing.
Right, absolutely, all the selfies. And that one thing that I've noticed is that young people are really good at selfies. They're really good at posing for pictures because they practice all the time. Yeah. So that's something we can learn. But one of the things is we're talking about the positive input in our psyche, in our self-image. It's the people we hang with. Do you have people around you who are positive and they speak encouraging words to you all the time, or do you have people around you that constantly bring you down and make you feel less than? And some people don't even intentionally do that. They don't mean to tear you down, but that's the way you take it. Yeah. So we need to evaluate who we hang with and what kind of words are being spoken around us and the influence that it has. One of the things that I love is on the teams that I take around the world for our missions trips, at the end of the trip, we write notes to each other. And I keep those throughout the years because they're so encouraging, and there'd be something that someone saw on the trip that I did or said that is just blessing me, and it still continues to bless me. Yeah. And so, things like that, those encouraging words. So, I just want to talk to our audience about that is, who are you hanging with, and what kind of, how do you walk away from them? What do you feel when you leave their presence? Is it positive or is it negative? And evaluate that, because we have that choice.
That's good.
And we also have a choice to believe it or not when somebody says something. We have to choose and make that decision. We also need to look at our feelings. Have you ever had one of those bad days where you just felt icky? And so what do? You put on your sloppiest clothes, right? And you don't want to do your hair. I mean, it's just one of those days, and everybody knows you're having one of those days because you don't take the time to overcome it, because we react to our feelings. Yeah. And, you know, if we would learn to take those feelings and change it, you know, and say, no, I'm gonna wear my favorite outfit today, you know, that it makes such a difference on our well-being, and we can make that difference. You know, they say that the difference in the darkest day and the brightest day is not the sun. The sun still shines just as bright, but it has to do with the clouds that hide it. And so on a dark day, you still have the sun shining.
Right.
And so on our darkest moment, we are still who we are. And we're still as pretty and as bright as we ever were. It's just we feel differently about it. We've got a cloud over our sunshine.
Right.
And so I really want to challenge everybody and think about this as you're listening to us talk. You know, let's look at what can we do to change those, to redirect our feelings and our self-talk.
Yes.
Because it will make a difference. It'll show on the outside. And we also want to do that for other people, you know, and be encouraging to those other people. Tell them how good they look and how much you honor them.
Right.
So perspective is the key to a great self-image. So what do you choose to believe? You know, what are you looking at when you see yourself? You know, most women can't walk past a mirror without looking at it, right? So what do you see when you look in the mirror? And we can change it. It's our choice, and we can redirect and change that.
Yeah.
So any last moments? We have last thoughts. We have a couple of minutes left.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Somebody.
Well, you know, we do, when you're doing ministry, especially with a lot of women, one thing that I've learned, women have internalized words spoken over them a long time ago, and it affects their self-image. So one thing we like to, practical thing that you can do is speak positive things about yourself to uproot those things that were spoken over you. So that's a practical tip. We call them affirmations now, but really just saying, hey, you're good enough. You know, I like that color on you. Sometimes you have to tell yourself. Sometimes if you know you looking good and you don't get a compliment, you have to tell yourself, you look good, girl.
That's right.
You know, you have to, you know, it's those things, because I just found that with women, women struggle with their image because of, again, they still need deliverance from other people and from what other people have said or what they think other people think about them. So
that's so good, and we have to retrain our thoughts. I remember when I was going through a really rough time back in my early 20s, and I had somebody counsel me. She said, I want you to look in the mirror every day and say, I love you. And I thought, oh, that's dumb. You know, I can't do that. I can tell myself I love myself, you know. But it was a lesson for me to learn to be comfortable in my own skin. And so I did it because I valued her. Yeah. And I found it really did create something in me that made me feel acceptable. Yeah. And it's because I'd accept myself. And that's where it starts. Yeah.
And I wanted to say, because you guys mentioned social media earlier, I think a big thing too is stop comparing yourself. Yeah. Because I think all of us have been marked beauty in a different way. And even the Bible says that, like, when you think about all the gems and all the things God created, He created us all uniquely too. Right. And if we're fearfully and wonderfully made, we can't compare, you know, what is beauty. Like you said earlier, Pastor Sharon, beauty is on the inside. Right. And as long as you're radiating what's on the inside of you that's positive and light, that's beautiful. Right. And I think that'll help, especially a lot of young girls and women who social media is such a thing they cling to, and it leads them to compare their self-worth to others. Yeah. And it really doesn't have any value when you think about it, because like we talked about before, a lot of times on social media, it's like a made-up image that somebody's showing anyway. Yep.
Yeah, I would just echo that real quick. You know, back when I was growing up, we had magazines, and you know, you look at the models on the magazines, and you want to be the model, and you know, you're not them. You're who God made you to be, and He made us all unique, and we need to embrace who we are in Him. Yes. And so, you know, just the same with social media, a lot of that stuff is fake. I mean, just like the magazine, all of those pictures were photoshopped. Right. And those aren't the real people. The supermodel doesn't look like that when they wake up in the morning.
Right.
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 And so the same thing with these, social media influencers and whoever is online, because they're doing things to their body and their face and whatever to make them look more appealing and so on, and be looked up to. But is that really who we want to be?
Right.
Or do we want to be who God has made us to be?
Right.
Unique.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Be unique. Yeah. Okay, I want to close with this one thing. This is from Audrey Hepburn, who is a beautiful actress back in the day. She said, "For attractive lips, speak words of kindness. For lovely eyes, seek out the good in people. For a slim figure, share your food with the hungry. For beautiful hair, let a child run his or her fingers through it once a day. For poise, walk with the knowledge that you never walk alone." I think that is such a good lesson, good, something to live by. That's what makes us pretty. And as I said before, the people that we really appreciate, that we think are beautiful, are the ones who are not necessarily the most beautiful, but the ones who are kind, the ones who speak encouraging words, the ones who have a helping hand for when you need it. Those are the people we think are beautiful.
Yeah.
So leave us your comments. We want to hear what you have to say about self-image, and we'll see you next time.